It's nice to be back with you again, and we're studying on the gift of faith. Last time we were talking about laws of nature. And the reason that we were looking at these laws is that we are studying to try to find out whether or not when miracles are performed, whether or not they're contrary to the laws of nature. So, again, we must look at these laws and see them for what they are. Let's turn in our scriptures, please, to John chapter 2 and verses 6 to 11. And we see here the story of where Jesus is ministering in a special way, in the form of a miracle. Do you know that this is the first miracle that's mentioned in the scriptures? So we'll put laws up here again, and then we will right under here, nature. Now, we've already studied several other laws. We've studied the law of compensation. We've studied the law of what are some of the others that we've studied? Buoyancy, yes. Kind of forgotten all of a sudden. Yes. All right, compensation. So, we're going to look at some more laws of nature here now, and this one, the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, They have no wine. And Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with you? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother said unto the servants, Whatever he says to you, do it. And there were set 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. And Jesus said unto them, Fill the water pots with water. Now, some of you are acquainted with the story of Samantha Bewitched on television. Some of you have seen that one. And you know how she wiggles her nose? And she does something, and of course, whatever she does, well, the dishes are removed off the table, or the floors are swept, or whatever. Now, Jesus didn't set about to do those kind of tricks. Strangely enough, we notice something very spectacular in the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. He was very down to earth, for one thing. He said to the people, You fill up the water pots. Huh. Why didn't he wiggle his nose or something and automatically the water is filled to the brim, up to in the water pots? Well, simple reason is that Jesus knew, for one thing, that they could fill the water pots. You know that Jesus will never do for us what we cannot do for ourselves? A lot of people want a miracle of healing. Maybe they can't walk, or maybe something's wrong with them. But, you know, they want healing then for their legs, but they want somebody else to do the walking for them. We are going to know something about these scriptures as we see miracles, that God will always let us do what we can do for ourselves, but he will perform the miracle, the thing that we can't do. So let's look at what happens at this point. He said to them, Now you fill the water pots with water, and they filled them to the brim. One thing is this. Another thing, when you're going to see a miracle, you're going to have to act on what is spoken, the word of faith that is spoken. Then he said unto them, Now draw it out, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And then they poured it out. Now they could not only fill up the water pots, but they could also pour it out. And what happened? When they poured it out, the water was turned to wine. Now there was the miracle. You see, they couldn't make the wine, but they could do all of the other, right? We say, is this contrary to the laws of nature? Is it contrary to the laws of nature? We've been asking this question for quite some time, and I'm still not quite ready to answer it yet. I know you're wanting to know. Some of you say, well, of course it's contrary to the laws of nature. But let's just look at it for a minute, and as we see some more of these miracles, and then we're going to see something exciting about this. Then the ruler of the feast, of course, he just about lost his false teeth, because he said, oh, did they have false teeth in those days? Maybe they didn't. He said, look, he says, I can't figure this one out. Usually the best wine comes at the first, and then they give us the worst at the last. But nonetheless, he says, you have kept the good wine until now. So this is something that the Lord ministered in a very, very special way here for a special reason. This, of course, is his first miracle since he came into his full-time ministry. This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. Every time you see a miracle, you will see that The reason for it is that others will believe in Jesus. It isn't, as I say, the miracles for the sake of miracles. It is for the purpose of people believing on him. This is why we don't all get up and go out and walk on water all of a sudden, just for the sake of saying, hey, look, I can walk on water. The purpose of it is that others will believe on Jesus Christ when a miracle is performed. Let's take a peek at another one here in John chapter 6. This is another one that looks like it might be rather difficult to do. And we'll start in at verse 5. And this is the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, where are we going to get so much food to feed all these people? Now, have you ever had a lot of company come to your house? And maybe your fridge was empty and your cupboard was bare and it was payday time and you still hadn't gotten your groceries yet? And you said to your wife or to your husband, hey, man, what are we going to feed them? You take your wife in the back room, and you say, look, we haven't got enough to feed them. Crackers and cheese today. Well, that's just what Philip said to Jesus. He said, what are we going to feed all these people? Now, there are all these people sitting out on the hillside. And there's so many of them that it would look... Well, you see, Jesus always cared about people, enough so that they had been out there on the hillside for some time. And he knew that they were getting hungry. So, of course, he's interested in people. He's interested in you. He's interested in every person. And I believe that there's even people that are watching right now that are hungry, that don't have enough to eat. The Lord Jesus Christ is interested in you, and he wants to feed you, not only spiritual food, but physical food, because he loves you. And here is one where Philip, we know here in verse 6, and this he said to prove him, for he knew what he would do. Now, we've studied the gift of the word of knowledge. He knew what he would do. That is to know something that's humanly impossible to know anything about. He's exercising the gift of the word of knowledge here. Philip then said to him, well, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take just even a little bit. So one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, tell you what, there's a little fellow over here. He's got his lunch with him. He's got a little brown bag, and he's got 5 loaves and 2 little fishes in there. And he says, that's all he's got. And that's all there is. I can't find anybody else that's got any food with him. Obviously, this little boy had come away from home. He had seen this parade go down the street. And I know what little boys and little girls are like, and they, of course, like to watch parades. And so he probably went into his mom, and he said, hey, Mom, can I see and follow this parade today? You like parades? You like parades? You don't like parades? Well, you're one in a million. You don't like parades? I like, the bands and everything going down the street are actually spectacular. And so this little boy must have gone in to his mom and says, Mom, I need a bagged lunch, and I want to go and see this parade. Well, Jesus was at the front of the parade. He was the grand marshal. And everybody wanted to follow him out to the hills. And so this little boy had taken his lunch. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised, but he's the same size as this little fellow right here. Yes. So anyway, the situation is such that Jesus and all of these people are sitting on the hillside, and they don't have enough to eat because they've been away from home for quite some time. And one of the disciples finds this little boy with all of this food. A whole bunch of it, that is. 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes, and that wouldn't have been very much, would it? And no wonder Philip and Andrew and Peter said, well, that isn't enough to feed anybody. Even the little boy could hardly get full on that. But Jesus said, now listen to what Jesus said. He said, I want you to make everybody sit down. Everybody sit down. He told them to make everybody sit down. Then it says, now there was much grass in the place, so that the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed it to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes, so much as they would. And when they were all filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the fragments that remained, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with fragments of 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. Now, according to my way of understanding something like this, it would seem like an utter impossibility to have 5 little loaves and 2 little fishes, and to be able to multiply this in our way of natural thinking, right? To make enough to feed 5,000 people with 12 baskets full left over. You've got to be kidding. Jesus, all he did, he just kept taking each loaf, little cakes, you know, the little buns, and every time he'd break one in half, and he kept filling up these baskets and break another one in half, and he just kept breaking them in half as he went along, until there was all of these baskets full. Now I ask you the question again, is what Jesus did here contrary to nature? We all know that when we sit down at a table and there's 4 or 5 buns sitting in front of us, and maybe only a little piece of meat or something like this, and this is all gone and we've eaten it all, there's no more left, right? Isn't this the simple understanding of it? I mean, it doesn't take any intelligence to figure that one out. Well, is what Jesus did contrary to nature? We, of course, are seeing a great miracle, obviously seeing a great miracle. I want us to turn to the book of Acts, because I want to see something special here. And this is in Acts chapter 12, verses 1 through to 12. And this is the story of Peter in prison. And they have been in prison for he's been in prison here for some special reason. That special reason is that he was put there for preaching Jesus Christ. And that's a special reason for a person being in prison. I said to you before that the Lord will never do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Until we understand miracles and until we understand principles of miracles, we're never going to see them. Neither we're going to see them exercised under our hands. And I know that you're wanting this to happen. I know that you're wanting to see miracles. This is when Peter had been put in prison. And we'll start maybe at verse 4. And when he had apprehended him, that is Herod, and put him into prison, we're talking now about Peter, and delivered him to 4 quarters of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. And when Herod would have brought him forth, the same night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison. And behold, the angel of the Lord came unto him, and a light shined in the prison. Now, one thing we want to look at, first of all, is this, that Peter is sleeping between 2 soldiers, and he is bound with 2 chains. Now, you know very well that when soldiers are there and you're bound with chains, there's no way you're going to get freed unless somebody's got a key to take those chains off, correct? You can't do it yourself, and he's bound with his arms and his legs, and he cannot break those chains himself. Then it says, the angel of the Lord came unto him, and a light shined in the prison. Now, Peter didn't even have a flashlight. Here we find the Lord doing a miracle here, and that a light, first of all, appears, and it's pitch black in that prison. And then he smote Peter on the side, and he raised him up, saying, rise up quickly, and the chains fell off of his feet. Now, we know something here, that Peter couldn't have taken the chains off by himself. No way. But when he got up, it says the chains fell off his feet. What happened to the soldiers at this point? Wonder if maybe they were sound asleep or what? You know, sometimes Jesus opens blind eyes. But maybe in this case, he caused the eyes to be blinded. So they couldn't see. Then the angel said unto him, come here, Peter. Let me put your clothes on for you. Is that what your Bible says? Nah. No, the angel said, you put your clothes on. He knew that Peter could dress himself. You know, there is a lot of people talking about angels today, and I believe in angels. The scriptures teach about angels and angel visitations. But I know one particular situation where it says that one man writes, and he says that some angels were bathing him. And I thought, hello there. Oh, so very interesting. I have a hard time relating to that one. I'm not quite sure what type of angels. I wonder if they might have been fallen angels. Because you see, the angel here in prison didn't get up and say, now look, Peter, I'm going to dress you. He knew that Peter could dress himself. And I have a few doubts about angels bathing other people, because you can bath yourself very nicely. And then, not only did he say, get up and dress yourself, but also put on your shoes. The angel didn't even bend over and put his shoes on for him. I get a kick out of this one. And then the angel said, now, put on your overcoat. Put on your coat over to... He didn't even hold his coat for him. He knew that Peter could dress himself. And then Peter did so, and then he put his coat upon himself, and they went out, and Peter followed him, and he didn't even know it was true what the angel had done, but he thought he had seen a vision. Then, when they were past the first and the second ward, obviously the Lord blinded the eyes of those again, and then it says that the gates opened of their own accord. Oh, my. And again, Peter couldn't have opened those gates. They were locked and barred tight. Well, then it says the angel left him. Of course, Peter thought he'd seen a vision. It seemed like a dream to him. I'm going to leave it at that at this moment, but I'm wanting to mention something specifically on this. In that, as we look at these miracles, again, God can perform the miracle, and we know that God can perform miracles. Many of us have seen miracles. But we also know that he's not going to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. You know, it's one thing to sit at home and say, you know, look, Lord, I want you to provide me with food on the table. I want you to give me money for my needs. And, you know, we can sit there and not even make any effort to get a job or not any effort to do any work. And what's going to happen? We'll never get anywhere, right? We can sit and say, well, Lord, I believe in a lot of things. And it's one thing to believe in something. It's quite another thing to get into action and do something about it. We're going to learn something about this law that shows us how to get something as we believe for it. And we see here as Jesus performed these miracles, both with the turning of water into wine and with the changing of the bread and the fishes and multiplying it, we see that there's something here that's significant in the performing of miracles, where we can do what we can do, and the disciples dispersed the bread and so on, right? And the angel did what he could do, and Peter did what he could do. Everybody is able to use their intelligence. God is not going to do things for us so that we will not have to make some effort to do it. There will have to be effort going into it. But a lot of people seem to think that things are going to be handed to them on a silver platter. But God knows the human nature, and he also knows that we have to take an active step in ourselves to expect the miracle. We said in our very first seminar on the gift of faith, we have to expect a miracle. And if we act on doing it, we're going to see the miracle. You see, if the disciples didn't believe that Jesus was going to do something to feed the people, they would not have made an active step to say, now look, you fellas and you women and children, sit down in companies and sit down all over the place, because they believed that Jesus was going to do something. Are you following me? It's so simple sometimes I think we fall over it, and I want to just go into it because it is something that we fail to realize. There is the simplicity of believing in what Jesus has told us to do. And until we can understand it, we're going to have a problem believing in literal miracles taking place under our hands. I had a situation happen where I had one person who had been healed of a condition of arthritis. And this was in Barbados. And the person they'd called them up to the front. And they said that they had been healed of arthritis. And I said, well, how do you know you're healed of arthritis? Well, I can move my hands. I can move everything. No problem. Everything's fine. So they said, well, listen, since I've been healed of arthritis, how about, would you minister to this lump on my foot? And I says, what lump? And they says, well, it's right there on my foot. Well, it's not there anymore. And they couldn't even see the lump. And I said, well, show me. Well, where was the lump? And they bent down to their foot and pointed. Well, it was right there. Well, the lump was right there, but the lump is gone. I says, oh, come on, really, right? Where was it? Show me, come on. And they bent way down and showed me where the lump was. Well, I said, they stood up again, and I says, are you sure? And the person's eyes got really wide. My back is healed. My back is healed. And they had arthritis in their back as well. And now you see they bent down and their back had been healed as well. So this is what we call acting on what God has done. Will you come back and see us next time when we're going to tell you some more about the gift of faith?